Screw it. I think I've spent a few hours staring at a Microsoft Word window trying to come up with a clever intro for this video, and I got nothing. Best Buy had a huge sale after Christmas, and while I was hoping to find a Super Nintendo classic, I found a shitload of copies of Starlink Battle for Atlas going for less than half price. I'd been eyeballing the game for ages, for reasons that will soon be obvious, so I scooped it up and got a pretty good deal on a pretty good game. And I haven't been playing anything else in the month since Christmas other than Smash Ultimate, so yeah, let's talk about Starlink. The game stars the Starlink Initiative, a group of pilots, scientists, and an alien collective that form Earth's first intergalactic space expedition. When journeying to a system called Atlas, the group is attacked by an alien warlord named Grax, who leads a massive army of robotic soldiers and vessels called the Legion. The Initiative ship is crippled and the group's leader is kidnapped, so Grax can use his knowledge to start powering up the expansive and long-dormant Legion armada to take over Atlas and then spread to other systems. It's up to Starlink to pull their shit together without their mentor, liberate the Atlas system, rescue their leader, and stop the Legion once and for all. Oh, and also Fox McCloud is there. Ubisoft has some kind of ongoing development crossover deal with Nintendo, where Ubisoft is allowed to use some of Nintendo's franchises in their own games. The first product of this union was Mario and Rabbids! Which I haven't played, and this is the second product of the deal. If you bought Starlink on the Switch, the entire game becomes a crossover with the Starfox franchise. Not only are Fox and his iconic ship, the R-Wing, included as additional playable characters, but the game throws in an exclusive bonus side quest where you hunt down Fox's rival, Starwolf. They work Fox's teammates into the game with some true to the series banter and meme-tacular hammy voice acting. Everybody's written in character. I think the Starwolf quest actually works into the lore of the series pretty well. They even show off with some exceptionally obscure trivia.
Where did you say you were from?
Well, most of us are from a planet called Earth.
My home planet is Papatoon.
Yeah, I don't think that planet's been mentioned since the Super Nintendo original. How do you do 2 reboots of a series and the original is still the most heavily referenced? Oh, you shut up! Fox doesn't really contribute to the plot. It is still the Starlink crew's game after all, but they do a pretty good job incorporating Fox and crew into the plot without them feeling out of place or taking over the story. Even if it's sometimes hilarious how cutscenes have Fox standing around doing nothing because they could only modify the base game so far. Starlink is a ship combat game set in a massive system consisting of 7 planets and freely traversable outer space in between. In space, you have dogfights with Legion and outlaw ships, assault enemy bases with huge numbers of fighters, traverse asteroid fields, and salvage wrecked vessels. And planetside, your ship enters a hover mode for a kind of ground combat against enemy hovercraft, foot soldiers, turrets, and walkers. The controls took a little getting used to since I'm accustomed to classic Starfox and Rogue Squadron, and these days all the flight games use the cockamamie right stick to steer and left stick for speed control, but the controls are really smooth. You can equip 2 weapons at a time, and we'll elaborate on this later, but your starting loadout consists of a Gatling gun, a short-range fire beam weapon, and ice-homing cluster missiles. You have loadouts for any range and can deal elemental damage and combos to most of the game's enemies. Given that you start the game out with a highly accurate homing cluster missile, the combat is more about avoiding damage than dishing it, maneuvering around enemies to dodge fire, keeping track of your surroundings, and managing enemy numbers so you don't get dogpiled until you can kill your targets. Enemy weapons have insane accuracy, so while running away to recover health typically works on land, that shit don't fly in the space combat. If things go tits up in space, you're forced to stand your ground and fight your way out, even though it breaks every instinct in your body to circle strafe in aerial dogfights. The combat is really fun, fast-paced, engaging, and well-balanced. Your ship and weapons are just strong enough that you can get through most battles with tenacious dodging, but also weak enough to make you actively pursue side content. A lot of enemies are damage sponges, your weapons need to reload often, and it doesn't take all that much fire to kill you until you quest for upgrades. It's also worth mentioning that while the game's respawn system is very generous, you only get 1 life unless you buy an extra ship, which brings us to the game's main gimmick. Starlink launched alongside a series of toys, alternate ships, pilots, and weapons that are sold separately, and you can scan into the game with a specialized controller. This bulky, awkward-ass controller. Incidentally, the R-Wing packaged with the Switch version of Starlink is the only commercially available R-Wing model because Nintendo is stupid. This toy is half the reason I wanted the game in the first place. Anyway, unlike other Toys-to-Life games, the main example in my mind being Disney Infinity, you get the full game without buying any of the toys. The game comes with a jack-of-all-stats ship called the Zenith, plus weapons to cover pretty much all your bases, plus the Switch version has the high-speed, low-ammo R-Wing as a second playable ship, everything you need to play the game comes included with the damn game. The extra ships and weapons feel purely optional, not like they're hiding the rest of the content.
Now, luckily for me, I do not fall for the transparent monetization schemes of the games industry. I don't buy season passes, I don't buy microtransactions, I don't buy XP boosters. I don't fall for that shit. That being said, I did purchase the Nadir pack because, I wanted to support the game. I found a good price for it. It comes with a cool black hole missile weapon. And then I bought the Neptune pack because I was curious about the stasis weapon. The ship looks cool. You can't have a squad with only 2 ships, right? And then I bought the Lance pack because Team Starfox has 4 ships in it, goddammit. To be honest, it kind of looks like a wolfen to me if you squint real hard. And then I went on eBay and bought a model of the Zenith because it only comes packaged with the PS4 and Xbox One version. The ship looks cool. I might have a problem. The Pulse just looks like a bland race car and the other 2 ships are blatant palette swaps, so I think I'm done. I think.
They're pretty high-quality toys in my opinion. Good size, right amount of mass, the wings and weapons are interchangeable with sturdy connections, and because wings and weapons use the same mount, you can stack wings or mount shit backwards and upside down for tons of creative combinations. Also, no matter how many wings you stack on a single ship, the game will render whatever janky vomit you plug into the controller. It's just rigged to shut down your ship for being too heavy if you connect more than 6 wings at once. Let's be frank, this monetization scheme still reeks of crap. It sucks for a ship combat game to not give you any extra ships or weapons in-game, and if you buy any of these ships digitally, they still charge $13 for what amounts to a single DLC character. I have significantly less patience for that pricing model if you don't get a model ship to go with it. But at least the game doesn't feel incomplete in its base form. On top of being able to mix parts to customize your ship's core stats, each ship and weapon can be equipped with mods, which take the place of actual upgrades and allow you to spec your ship however you want, provided you've gotten the right mods through side content. The pool of mods is wide enough to give you a ton of great customization options, but also shallow enough that you'll usually get items that you'd actually use. If you get duplicates, you can combine identical mods to promote them to higher tiers, ensuring that the side content is almost always giving out rewards that, well, don't suck. All in stark contrast to the game that everybody compared Starlink to. I tried researching Starlink when I was still debating whether to buy it. The base game cost $80 between the model ship and specialized controller, and all I found was that several critics had vaguely compared Starlink to No Man's Sky. After all, both games have planet-sized maps, free exploration and navigation, space battles with pirates, and each world has indigenous species, landmarks, and crashed ships to explore and salvage. Hell, the art styles even look pretty similar. However, that's pretty much where the comparisons end because Starlink is an actual game, not a terrain generation demo. Your ship has infinite fuel and ammo, so you're not bogged down with resource collection, and your ship is fast enough that getting to a destination never feels tedious. You're not bogged down with empty busy work, and the game keeps its focus on the action. Almost all your time is spent either killing enemies or flying to the next enemy that you want to kill. Don't get me wrong, there's enough downtime that the combat never becomes exhausting. Even with your ship's high movement speed, navigation takes enough time that worlds feel suitably massive. My point is that the game doesn't jerk you around or hide the actual content from you. And hell, if you absolutely need to get your fix for picking up rocks, you can scavenge bits of metal and organic matter to upgrade your bases, which again is a quick optional activity that doesn't bog down the actual interesting parts of the game. The game maintains a brisk pace, even in your downtime or when you're screwing around. The game has a clear story with clear stakes, gameplay structured so you're always making clear progress towards a clear goal, you have a clear sense of who the villains are and how they work and why you should kick their asses, and the game world isn't boring. The Atlas system has an actual backstory. The system was a giant series of gold rush towns as aliens across the galaxy settled in Atlas to make their livings mining a valuable currency called Electrum. Then the Legion came in, wrecked a lot of people's shit in a reign of terror, and then the Legion shut down, leaving a lot of people stranded in Atlas with nowhere else to go. The people in Atlas are struggling, barely eking out a living under constant fear of the Legion reawakening and under constant attack from outlaws raiding and picking over all the mining equipment. The Starlink initiative comes in and offers these beaten down and desperate people the first ray of hope they've had, uniting people to take back Atlas and restore peace for the first time in ages. In the opening stretch of the game, you encounter a lot of NPCs with well-written dialogue, giving life to this universe and driving home the personal and human stakes of your your mission. By reining in the size of the game world to 7 planets, they can fill the game with predefined structures with detailed backstories, creating a cohesive and fleshed out environment. The NPCs with engaging dialogue kinda dry up in the second half of the game, but still, Atlas feels like a living, breathing universe where you're actually important. You get invested into this world, its people, and its fate. Whereas No Man's Sky was so lifeless, sterile, and indifferent to your mere existence that it was eventually written into the plot and won a gold medal in missing the point. The first several hours of the game are fairly linear. The game guides you by the nose from place to place with basic objectives. Go here, kill that enemy, or run a mission for this guy, build a base here. Simple stuff. Turns out those first several hours are a stealth tutorial for the open-ended second half of the game, where you're turned loose in Atlas and left entirely to your own devices. Halfway through the game, 2 dreadnoughts warp into the system. The dreadnoughts deploy primes, these giant quadraxis-looking walker enemies. Primes wander around a planet planting extractors, and extractors spawn more enemies on that planet and generate a red fog that stops you from taking off. Dreadnoughts get massive power boosts and curb stomp you if any of their primes are still active, and primes become powerful multi-phase bosses if too many extractors are still active. So to take out the dreadnoughts, you have to visit a planet, gradually clear out enemies until the prime is vulnerable, and work your way up clearing planets until the primes are defeated and the dreadnought is vulnerable to attack. Trouble is, taking out a dreadnought is a long process, and dreadnoughts constantly launch new primes, so you either build or recruit bases, both to assist you on a given planet and to secure a planet so you don't have to babysit worlds you've already saved. You can build observatories to map out planets and find other bases. You can build refineries to regularly supply you with free cash. Workshops regularly give you free mods and sell you some of the best mods in the game, and most importantly, armories will spawn AI allies to help you in combat. And trust me, unlike the help that Fox is usually stuck with, your AI partners are badass. They dramatically pump up your damage output to steamroll over tough battles if they're nearby, and they'll even take out extractors on their own to cut down on your busy work. And if you take out enough Legion forces and recruit enough allies to get a planet to 100% alliance strength, you get a massive quasi-game-breaking power-up through the rest of the system. The ability to build armories as soon as you land, slashing the cost of building new bases in half, automatic buffs to your AI units, good motivations to lock down as many planets as you can. The catch is that all this building and upgrading of your bases takes cores, which you get by basically doing every side activity that you can find. Salvaging ships, liberating cities, attacking outlaw bases, wrecking all manner of Legion shit, all fun, quick side battles that give you valuable rewards. The running theme of the game is that every bit of side content you do tangibly makes the rest of the game easier. Complete a daunting quest by breaking it into pieces and working your way to the top. You attack extractors to weaken primes, you attack primes so you can take on a dreadnought, you build bases to make planets easier to fight through, and you do side content to build bases and get better upgrades for your ship. All of the side content feels rewarding because everything feels like it advances you towards a grand goal. The game nailed me into that addictive gameplay loop where you're constantly making progress and want to capitalize on that progress. The action is fun, there's a load of stuff to do, and you get a steady drip feed of satisfying rewards building up to major conquests, all of which combines to make the gameplay really satisfying. I still cheer or fist bump every time I work my way up to slaying a prime or bringing down a dreadnought because it's well structured to always feel awesome. Now, some of you may be thinking, do I really have to go through all this side quest bullshit? Can't I just skip to the end of the game? And fair enough. You only have to liberate 2 planets to open up the ending of the story. To my knowledge, you can skip the dreadnoughts entirely and completely ignore 2 or 3 planets and still jump to the ending. Note that I said to my knowledge because I didn't try it out myself. However, the combat is not terribly leveraged in your favor. By this point, you've probably gotten your ass kicked at least a dozen times trying to fight enemies that outrank you. Skipping right to the ending robs you of a lot of mods you desperately need to adequately level your ship, and there's a rather unsubtle hint that the final battle is harder if any dreadnoughts are less active. You want to skip right to the end of the game? Good luck! I really like the way the game uses music. When you're between planets, the game switches over to this dark, echoing score to evoke the emptiness of space. It reminds me of the music from Descent Free Space. The major battles with primes and dreadnoughts use dynamic music that changes depending on how the fight's going. You work a few hours to build up to battling one of these bosses, have a grand battle with multiple phases and loads of enemies spawning in, and as the boss's health winds down, the game switches over to this epic and majestic score to punctuate the end of your quest. God, is that awesome! outlaws are a royal pain in the ass. They ambush you when traveling planets, they attack cities and your outposts, they oppress citizens. If you trip too many hyperspace traps, an elite outlaw comes in, and early in the game they kick your ass. They taunt you endlessly, and they always eject when you shoot them down, so none of them ever die. But if you fight enough outlaws, you'll get an outlaw base added to the outer space map. Once you level up a bit, you can raid an outlaw base, have this huge, fun space battle full of turrets, mines, and fighters, and you drive the outlaws out of their base and, just to add insult to injury, steal everything they had in said base. I was on cloud 9 the first time I took out a base. Hours of being harassed by these assholes, and now I get to burn their freaking house down, take all their stuff, and a single raid gives you a ton of cores. It is so damn satisfying. Yeah, I wasn't kidding about the Nadir coming with black hole missiles. Gravity weapons create little vortexes that you can then set on fire to suck in and continuously damage enemies. It's awesome. I don't even need the resources for winning these raids anymore. It's just that raids on outlaw bases and dreadnoughts are some of the best battles you get in the game once you learn how to manage the swarms of fighters, mines, and turrets. Taking out a dreadnought involves flying through a tunnel, avoiding lasers, and draw style. This really is a Starfox game. I have complaints, but most of them aren't major. The way the controls are laid out, it's really hard to steer while boosting. Use your right thumb to hold A and boost, and you steer with the right analog stick. I don't need to strafe or adjust speed while boosting, so just have the left stick steer while boosting. Simple solution! You can flip your ship's weapon so that they face backwards and shoot behind you, but missiles fired behind you will loop around to attack enemies in front of you, so the whole shoot behind you mechanic is pretty much useless. There could probably stand to be more variety to the enemies. The combat is fast and engaging enough that I never found it repetitive, but this is a long game and I could see some people getting sick of the combat. I played the game on normal difficulty, just out of common practice, and Legion forces spread way too slowly for there to be much urgency to base building and securing planets. I've read that's kind of the case with harder settings too, but fair is fair. There are 2 difficulties higher than what I played through. And this isn't a complaint, but it's freaking weird. Not counting the Switch-exclusive Starwolf quest, there's only one side quest in the game. You track down St. Grand's data canisters, get profiles and backstory for the main cast. There are some good puzzles and a good little self-contained story, but again, only side quest in the game. Maybe more side quests were planned and abandoned, I don't know. Point is, they have a system for switching between side stories and the main campaign, and they barely use it. The Starwolf side quest is also balanced with the assumption that you're doing it near the start of the game, or at least it feels like it, so it was kind of anticlimactic by the time I finally got around to doing it. The main characters are likable enough. They have just enough personality and family dynamic to make them endearing, but nothing that makes them particularly memorable. But I've read that a lot of people hate Levi, a blogger who talks in that stereotypical way that fiction writers think social media addicted teens talk, and which I pray isn't real.
Dude, that's awesome! Another alien, bro! For the win!
Carl, what's happening? Who are these people?
Hashtag Starlink, yo!
Levi doesn't get on my nerves because half his lines of dialogue are immediately followed by somebody else in the crew rolling their eyes at him or implicitly yelling at him to shut up. So the in-game characters acknowledge that his shtick is annoying.
You can just do what I do and sleep in Hunter's ship.
Shut up, Wesley.
If I had a big problem with the game, the ending just feels anticlimactic. The game establishes that there are 2 other suns in Atlas, presumably meaning that there are 2 more systems and sets of planets to deal with, and it makes a huge deal that you need to assemble an army to fight the Legion because you can't take on Grax alone. I expected that there would be 2 battles with Grax where you fight him and he retreats to a bigger base and you build up to another battle and there's another set of planets to liberate. I expected the game to end with a huge space battle where all the allies we've accumulated come to our aid to shove right up Grax's ass, and the alliance you've painstakingly assembled from the ground up would battle the Legion and all the prep work and side questing would pay off. No, none of that happens. Once you've liberated at least 2 planets, you build 2 Starlink towers to boost your flagship's warp engines, you go to fight Grax, and it just takes you to a straight one-on-one fight with Grax piloting a giant mech suit, and then it's over. You never visit the 3rd Atlas system, so why they brought it up is anybody's guess, and while the fight with Grax is a good boss, he just doesn't have enough presence in the story for the fight to feel epic. Downside to having an open world game. Resolving the entire game with a one-on-one battle and a final cutscene where the Starlink crew celebrates with their allies just doesn't feel like a culmination of this system-wide battle for freedom that the game's been built around. Something like Return of the Jedi's montage of planets celebrating and flourishing with the big evil empire destroyed would have better encapsulated the scope and stakes of the game. Maybe the problem is with me, but I just expected more. The post-game is also pretty weak. New dreadnoughts continue to warp into the system forever and you can run more side quests, but the point of the game's side content is to grind up for the final battle. Once the final battle's over, there's not much point to keep playing. You'll get more mods that you don't need anymore and more Nova to build bases that you don't need anymore. You can keep playing once you've beaten the game, there's just no point to it. It's probably best to think of the game like Spider-Man Web of Shadows, the rare open-world game that does definitively end when the story ends, rather than having a 100% completion goal, and hey, I'm fine with that. The game's replay value instead comes from having 4 difficulty settings, and yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into a higher difficulty and using more of my ships when I have the time. Disappointing ending aside, Starlink Battle for Atlas is a really fun ship combat game. I could see the action getting repetitive for the game's length, and I could see people not liking the setup for side content, but the combat is really fun, the vastness of the game world is exhilarating, the world is fleshed out and interesting, the characters are likable, and the progression and gameplay loop are satisfying. If you like what you've seen here, I highly recommend picking it up. If absolutely nothing else, it's easily the best Starfox game that's been made since the Nintendo 64. And it's starting to sink in how sad of a statement that really is. I know I've crapped on Ubisoft a lot in the past, and they've deserved it, but if they can make games this good with Nintendo's neglected franchises, screw it, I hope they do an F-Zero game next.
Let's be honest here. You guys need all the help you can get.